Let's get started swatching. The shades you see on the right hand side are alternative options for some of the shades in the palette, and I'm going to go over that as we're swatching. Let's get started. Our first dupe is this beautiful blue purple lavender that I chose from the Best Mattes palette of Bella Beauté Bar. The shades in this palette do not have a name, so I'm just going to have to show you which shade it is on the screen. Our next shade is As If. A beautiful, I think this is more of a satiny and not exactly shimmery purple from Sydney Grace. I used this in one of my looks beauties. I did 2 looks with this palette and 2 of my to buy or not to buys. Both are linked below if you're interested. Next shade in the palette looks like a teal to blue to purple multichrome, for which I picked Borealis from Divina. That is exactly that. For our next shade, I used Fun from Matte About Hue palette of Colourpop. In a lot of photos of this palette, this shade looks deep purple, but in the swatches, it looks more burgundy, and that's the version I went with. Another option for this shade is Chestnut from Terra Moons. My Chestnut was occupied in another dupe palette, Botanical palette from Beauty Bay, which is why I did not pick it for this dupe. If you want to see how that swatches, the video of my dupe of that palette is linked below. To dupe our next shade, I chose Camp, also from Matte About Hue palette. This shade kind of looks lighter than some of the swatches of Arttitude's palette, but it's kind of difficult to know because this shade actually looks different in different swatches. In some swatches it looks lighter, in some swatches it looks deeper. Now, you can always build this up. The next shade in the palette, based on the swatches available on Instagram, look like a very light pink to gold. And Tucana from Divina is exactly that, which is why I picked Tucana to dupe it. Tucana also has a green shift. I couldn't tell if the Arttitude shade also has a green shift or not, but hey, if it's not multichromy, then using a multichrome to dupe it is a bonus. The palette's next shade looks like a dusty light teal, which looked very similar to Vanilla from Divina, and that's why I used Vanilla. In the swatches of Arttitude palette available on Instagram, this next shade reminded me of Rainbow Blossom from Divina, and that's why I picked Rainbow Blossom. Even the texture of the swatch looked like the texture of this shade, which looks like the shade is comprised of tiny, tiny glitters. Again, beauties, we never talk about unsafe glitters in this channel. We're talking about mica glitters, which are safe for the eyes. Based on the swatches available online, it was hard to figure out what this next shade looks like, but for it I decided to pick an iridescent multichrome Light Year from Terra Moons, which has a gold to green to teal shift. This is one of those super special shades. Our next shade looks like a reddish pink matte. I chose Seize the Day from Colourpop to dupe it. Now, I feel like my duping is a little bit more pink. I could have probably picked a more reddish color. I just couldn't find one. For our next shade, I have 2 options. Our first option is Angel Wings. This shade, based on the swatches, look like it's a light pinky burgundy base with a blue to gold to green hue over it, and Angel Wings is exactly that. Angel Wings is from Looxi, and it's such a beautiful shade, but unfortunately we all know what happened to Looxi. So because this shade might not be available, in case you don't have it already, I have a second option for you. Now, the second option is a bit more extreme. This one is Grisaille, and it has a much deeper both base, much more pinky base, and also the hue over it is a lot more blue purple than just light blue with gold and green. Grisaille pretty much has no shift of green or gold. Our next dupe is also from the Best Mattes palette of Bella Beauté Bar. This is a beautiful cool toned pink, but in case you want a more vibrant or lighter pink, I have two other options for this shade for you. Bubblegum from Give Me Glow is the first alternative, which is a little bit more warm toned. Zinnia from Looxi is the second alternative, which is a much deeper and more vibrant shade. The next shade in the palette is a black matte, but you all know my relationship with black matte if you follow me. If you are new to this channel, first of all, welcome. Second, I don't really like black mattes, but there are a few you can use. I think Raven from Looxi is an option, but I chose to pick this one, which is Slade from Sydney Grace. It's a gunmetal shimmer, so it has a hint of blue. It's such a special shade, actually, and it really goes with the other shades in the palette. In a lot of swatches, our next shade looks like just a solid, light-toned gold, but I chose to pick this shade instead of it, which is definitely a duochrome, if not a multichrome. This is Gold Rush from Looxi Beauty. You can see that it has very light reddish base with a gold that goes to green over it. I figured the green shift, or I should say the tealy green shift, would go with the other teals in the palette. Talking about teal shades, our next shade is also a teal, and for this one, I chose another shade from the Best Mattes palette of Bella Beauté Bar. For duping our last shade, I chose the shade So Casual from Colourpop's Matte About Hue palette. This is such a beautiful, beautiful matte blue. Beauties, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. I dupe a lot of popular palettes, and my duping playlist should be recommended to you on the screen. Have an amazing day, and until next time, bye!